The 2024 Post-SONA discussions. Mahalagang magkasama-sama tayo ngayon upang pag-usapan at talakayin ang mensahe ng ating Pangulo kahapon sa kanyang State of the Nation Address. Ilan sa mga ito ang mga usapin sa seguridad sa pagkain, pagpapaunlad ng ekonomiya, pagprotekta sa kapakanan ng mga manggagawa, pagbuti ng serbisyo medikal sa bansa at iba pa. Lahat ng ito para sa bagong Pilipinas. For this session, we will tackle more about food security and economic development. Paano at ano-ano nga ba ang ginagawa ng ating pamahalaan upang magkaroon ng sapat at pangmatagalang solusyon sa gutom at mga oportunidad tungo sa pag-unlad ng ating ekonomiya? Now with us today are our esteemed panelists. First, we have Anti-Red Tape Authority Undersecretary Genesis Abot, Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs, Secretary Frederick Go, National Economic and Development Authority, Secretary Arsenio Balisacan, Department of Agrarian Reform Secretary Conrado M. Estrella III, Department of Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel Jr., Department of Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Alfredo Pascual, Department of Tourism Secretary Maria Cristina Garcia Frasco, Department of Budget and Management Secretary Amena Pangandaman, National Irrigation Administrator Eduardo Guillen, Department of Interior and Local Government Secretary, Undersecretary Audi. I'm sorry. Audi Pasaraba. Round of applause. And Philippine Science Agency Director General Joel Joseph Mariano Jr. Okay, now that we are energized and ready for our post-SONA discussions, following the insightful State of the Nation address of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. yesterday, we will now dive into his message for us Filipinos. One of these is flashed on our screen, and I quote, "The rationalized incentive scheme under the CREATE Act has also made possible the generation of investments amounting to more than 1 trillion pesos and more than 100,000 new jobs. This promising state of affairs is now beckoning us to create more through the passage of the Create More Act." Now let's begin with Secretary Go. Please expound on this.
The Create More Act is on top of the list of priorities among the priority bills currently at the Senate. We have received the very strong signals of very strong support from the upper house. The result of the many trips of our president has solicited many comments and concerns regarding the current situation for fiscal incentives in our country. Therefore, we work together with all the stakeholders and all the government agencies concerned to come up with some amendments to the Train Bill and the Create Bill. So now we have the Create More Bill, which will achieve several things. Foremost is to speedy up the processing of applications for fiscal incentives for foreign direct investments as well as domestic market enterprises. One of the major features of that bill is to empower the investment promotion agencies in our country to be able to process majority of the applications within their levels. Second main objective of the Create More Bill is to simplify and to clarify the VAT provisions that have become clouded by the previous laws. No? So there will be a lot of clarification on specifically value-added taxes, as well as the non-income tax benefits of registrants in our investment promotions agencies. And third will be the VAT refund issues that are currently a concern of the stakeholders. So there will be more clarity and streamlining of VAT refund applications in the Create More Act.
Thank you, Secretary Go. Let's move on to Secretary Balisacan. This is about rice production. Inilahad ng Pangulo na ang ani na ito ay katumbas lamang ng 13 milyong tonelada ng bigas. Kulang pa rin ito para sa ating pangangailangan na 16 na milyong tonelada ng bigas, kung kaya't napipilitan tayong mag-angkat. Ngunit lokal na production pa rin ang ating mas pinahahalagahan. Ano po ang masasabi ninyo dito?
Thank you. Thank you. I think that question should have been with Sekiko, but let me start with that, so you can elaborate later. First of all, let me define, provide the context. No? As you have seen in the speech of the President, food security is a major concern. And itong food security has 4 dimensions. No? Availability, affordability, access, and the nutrition value. Now, with respect to availability, we have been pushing for national availability of rice. Unfortunately, the challenge we have had over the past, at least past 3 decades, is that our population is growing faster than our production. Because productivity growth has been quite slow relative to population growth. So over the years, the gap between our domestic requirement, consumption requirement, and production has been growing. And the only way we can supply affordable and accessible food to our Filipinos is to increase that availability by bringing in additional supply through importation. So, with respect to accessibility, the issue there is also making sure that rice is available in whatever corners of the Philippines a Filipino is. No? And so it's very important that logistics is available, that a very efficient distribution system is there. With respect to affordability, it's not just a question about price, which has been very high, but it's also a question of the purchasing power of consumers. That is, income is a major aspect of that. So, and of course, the nutrition is. I leave that to the DOH. So, if you see this problem is a multifaceted, and the solution requires whole of government approach because it involves so many sectors. But clearly, addressing the productivity issue is a main concern because, as we have pointed out, government has, we have neglected the sector for so many decades, and it's high time that we pay attention to this, and we are doing that now. Now, it has become even more critical issue these past few months because inflation in rice has reached over 20%, and whereas our overall inflation target is 2 to 4%. That has created a lot of problems, not just for our poor people, but also for the macroeconomy, and because that has led to higher interest rates. And so I can stop there, but I think that we are doing so many things on addressing that rice issue, and it's not just a rice issue, as I pointed out, but it requires a lot of intersectoral, intergovernmental work.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add to that, Secretary Laurel?
Well, more or less, I agree with the comments of Secretary Balisacan naman. So,
Okay,
I'll
and then
do
we'll
that.
get to you in a little while as well. We have a quote for you also. Secretary Balisacan, we also have, the President also mentioned this in his SONA. Because of compelling emergency reasons such as illegal price manipulations by hoarders, we are constrained to temporarily implement mandated price ceilings on rice. We also extended the reduced tariff rates to facilitate the importation of rice, corn, and pork until the end of this year. Tinitiyak ko sa ating mga magsasaka at sa buong sektor ng agrikultura na ang mga ito ay pawang pangkagipitang solusyon lamang. End of quote. What would NEDA have to say about that?
Okay, yeah. As I pointed out earlier, the last couple of months, starting with last year, prices have risen. They've become elevated. That the overall inflation for the country was starting to be dominated by food inflation. Of course, we know the reason for the increases in those prices. Primarily of this is the world price increases, particularly for grains. That was because of this regional conflicts, starting with the Russia-Ukraine war that disrupted the global supply chain. No? But domestically, we also have some problems with meat, in particular, the African swine fever, which caused a sharp reduction in our meat supply, particularly pork. No? Then you have this El Nino that hit us hard, particularly our rice sector. So all this means that there's simply not enough local production to meet our growing consumption needs, and we needed to bring in that imports. And while global prices were rising and remain elevated during that period, part of the temporary solution was to reduce the tariff, because if you have elevated prices in the world market and then you put on top of that high tariff, then the more those prices will be felt at the domestic level. So clearly, part of our policy tools to moderate and stabilize prices is to temporarily reduce those tariffs. And that's what we did through the actions of the NEDA board.
Thank you, Secretary Balisacan. Let's move to the right side of the stage. The President also highlighted this in his SONA. This is for the Philippine Space Agency. Since the nation's foray into space technology, our satellites in space have generated more than 51,000 maps, images, and spaceborne data for various purposes. These now provide us with vital information that guide our country's stratagems and decision-making in agricultural development, urban planning, and environmental management, including the strengthening of our maritime domain awareness, but to name a few. For Director General Mariano, the Philippine Space Agency is really coming up with a lot of tools for the government agencies to be aided with satellite. But for this specific conversation, let's focus on how will the Space Agency ensure food security.
Thank you, Daphne. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. And thank you for this opportunity to shed more light on this. First of all, when the President Bongbong Marcos Jr. talked about space technology, he was articulating two things, the present and the future. When he mentioned the 51,000 maps that were produced by the Space Agency in the course of 2.5, 3 years, he was talking about the capabilities that we are already trying to leverage. What's available now, let's use it. So the Space Agency is taking whatever is available in terms of satellite data. These are satellites, both Philippine satellites and satellites of other countries that we leverage. So we take that data and apply it right away. So at the same time, he talked about the future. We talked about the engineers building satellites because we're also going to try to build local industrial base for space technologies that would create high-value products. Now, for food security, there's been a lot going on with, the space is the ultimate high ground. From that vantage point, we can see wide areas. We can see frequent revisits of these satellites, measurements from space of agricultural parameters. We have problems perhaps distinguishing fake vegetation from real vegetation, but for satellites, they can see very fine colors or so-called wavelengths, and that will allow them to distinguish growth stages of different crops. Whether a crop has some disease or whether it's ripe for harvest already, etc. So those are capabilities that we are leveraging now. The Space Agency in the Philippines is all about collaboration. We're talking to different agencies of government, DNR, DA, DOE, DBM, to leverage these capabilities.
Well, thank you very much, Philippine Space Agency. So we can see that nation building here is not just in land and in our seas, but also in outer space. Very exciting. Okay, now let's move on to the center of the stage for Secretary Recto. The President also said, soon we will be implementing the pre-border technical verification and cross-border electronic invoicing of import commodities. This will send a strong signal that we mean serious business. Your take on this, Secretary?
Yes, we've been working with the President and the Bureau of Customs with regarding to this issue, and it is both trade facilitation and to curb smuggling. So this is part of our tax administration efficiency as well. And as the President said, we have a target to finish all of this within the next 2 years.
Wow. All right, another quote. The President also acknowledged the Congress and said, thanks to Congress, public-private partnership is a crucial funding mechanism for big-ticket projects. It's now institutionalized by force of law. PPP is seen to facilitate strategic investments and the timely development of projects under our Build Better More program, especially since around 1/4 of our flagship projects have been envisioned to be funded through this modality. Secretary Recto, please expound on this.
Yes, that's correct. That's part of our development plan. We have roughly about 9 trillion worth of investments in physical and digital infrastructure. That includes energy as well. A big part of this should be funded by the private sector. It is wise for government to use private sector balance sheet to fund these projects. And there is no additional debt or deficit insofar as government is concerned. And we would be able to get the efficiencies of the private sector.
Thank you. Another highlight during the President's SONA was when he mentioned, and I quote, the Philippine financial system remains robust and resilient. Tax and non-tax revenue collection was also efficient, in pace with our rejuvenated economy. Notably, for the past 2 years, our GOCCs remitted dividends to the national government with a combined tally exceeding their contributions in 2022. Secretary Recto, more details on this, please.
Yeah, first I'd like to say that one, we are on track to hit our fiscal targets for the entire year, and that's roughly about 4,250 billion. In the first 6 months of the year, we've collected more or less half of that. A large portion is also from non-tax revenue. Essentially, this is from GOCC dividends, privatization, income from the Treasury, so on and so forth. And we intend to double our collections from non-tax revenue this year. Last year, it was roughly about 200 billion. This year, roughly, we will get about 400 billion.
Thank you, Secretary Recto. And let's move on to Department of Budget and Management. Okay. Building on these and guided by strong fiscal discipline, our proposed government budget for this year was crafted with utmost care, diligence, and meticulous attention. We look to the cooperation of our colleagues in the legislature, not only that our proposed national budget be approved in your usual timely manner, but that it be adhered to as closely as possible. We expect all agencies to ensure that every centavo allocated will be judiciously spent for our urgent priorities and socially impactful programs. Secretary Pangandaman, Kindly expound on this, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Daphne. Magandang umaga po. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yes, our budget was approved by the President and the Cabinet 3 weeks ago. It amounts to 6.352 trillion pesos. It increased by 10.1% from this year's level of 5.768 trillion pesos. It's consistent with our fiscal consolidation program. It remains to be above 20%, a little above 20% of our gross domestic product. And if I may say, no, our department heads and agency heads submitted a total of 9.2 trillion pesos worth of programs and projects. We are happy to note that our cabinet secretaries or department secretaries are finally focusing and prioritizing their projects and programs, thus the big amount that they propose. But then, with the DBCC, we really have this fiscal consolidation, so it reached only 6.3 trillion pesos. We thank them for carefully prioritizing their projects. Those projects that were included in the level that we have for 2025 for our national expenditure program were carefully studied by them and the department by using the following criteria. First, we ensure that the proposed projects are implementation ready or shovel ready. They have done all the necessary planning so that day one, they can already go on with the implementation of their projects. Second, their capacity and absorptive capacity. We check and we look at their previous absorptive capacity from previous years since 2022. Next, we ensure that the projects are under the PDP Development Plan 2023-2028 and coherent with the medium-term fiscal framework 8-point socio-economic agenda. And I think, if I may, it's in the next question. And then we also, I think the biggest bureaucratic efficiency that the government done this year was the passage of the National Government Procurement Act.
Thank you, Secretary Pangandaman. You are excited to talk about this next quote. Let me read this. Of course, the President values a proper utilization of funds. And with this, he shared, with the newly enacted Republic Act number 12009 that I signed just last Saturday, government procurement will be modern and innovative, more streamlined and efficient, and truly at par with the global best practices. Secretary Pangandaman, how will this new act contribute to the proper utilization of government funds?
Well, first, the National Government Procurement Act, if I may say, is the biggest anti-graft and corruption reform in our modern history. So we're happy that the 20-year-old law is now amended, and it's more it's fully modernized. I mean, the process and the procurement system. The institutionalization of the early procurement method. Previously, we don't have it. We just issued circular on this, but now it's already part of the law. Meaning, once we submit the National Expenditure Program, all the projects of my colleagues here can already be bidded out as early as we will submit the fiscal year National Expenditure Program on July 29. Meaning after the submission to Congress and the Senate, they can already bid out their projects. And by January 1, they can already prepare the notice of award. So by January 1, they can already implement their projects. I think that's important in terms of implementation of their projects. Second, will you make use of technology, of modern technology? For common use supplies, we will use systems and applications like Lazada and Shopee. So it will just be add to cart. Because we know that for common use supplies, a lot of common use supplies are not available in procurement service in our warehouses. But now it will be online, similar to Shopee and Lazada. And we introduced a new mode or alternative mode of procurement. It's not just the low cost, but we will also consider the quality of the goods and services that we need in the national government. So basically, those are the three. And yeah, we will introduce green procurement in our procurement process, and we will have observers from the civil society in our procurement processes in the department. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Secretary Pangandaman. Now we'd like to ask Secretary Pascual of DTI to please expound on this statement by the President yesterday. Relevant scholarships and R&D grants will continue to be available, aligned with our agenda to foster startups, to commercialize and mass-produce R&D outputs. Crucial support, such as intellectual property rights enforcement and venture financing, have been put in place. Secretary Pascual, your thoughts, please.
Thank you, Daphne. I'll focus on startups first. Why we need startups? We need startups to promote innovation and adoption of technology in our economy in order to support the progress of the economy. And the DTI is taking the lead in promoting startups. We have various programs, starting with the initial stage of startup formation. We have a program called IDEA, and then we have the next program is advanced. It's advanced stage, and then the GAP. That's bringing the startup to the global access in providing market and financing. The areas that are being addressed now, that more than 130 startups that we have in our list of startups that we are supporting, and they are in various fields like agri-tech, fintech, edutech, and other sectors of the economy, specifically the application of advanced technology in these areas. We're also setting up, in cooperation with the Asian Development Bank, the National Innovation Gateway that will provide both the space and the support of startups and bringing them to a stage where they can really participate in the growth of the economy and create more jobs for our people. Now, to support the startups, we need a strong intellectual property law. We have an existing one, and I'm going to present to the President, hopefully soon, the proposed amendments to this law so we can strengthen the enforcement of the law and the further protection of intellectual property owners against piracy and counterfeiting. For providing financing, we have venture capital funds in the National Development Company, as well for relatively larger projects, and for smaller startup projects, we have the Small Business Corporation that can provide equity financing.
Thank you, Secretary Pascual. The President further stated, quote, "To sustain the country's economic gains, we are promoting investment-led growth. We have set in motion policies and programs to create an environment conducive for businesses to thrive, like reforms in the capital markets and implementation of green lanes. As a result, we have green lane certified around 100 projects with a total investment of about 3 trillion pesos across the sectors of renewable energy, digital infrastructure, food security, and manufacturing." Secretary Pascual, would you like to give us more details about this?
Yeah. No, well, the reason for the green lanes is that we in the DTI have been exerting effort to attract investments into our country. But the moment the interest has been expressed and pursued by foreign investors, they encounter obstacles in implementing their projects. So we propose to the President that we institutionalize the green lanes, which will be the system by which we can speed up the implementation of projects, starting with approval, permitting, and licensing phase dealing with local governments and national government. This is being done through our One-Stop Action Center in the Board of Investment, which is a part of the DTI. And we've been successful in attracting investments amounting in aggregate to 3 trillion pesos, involving, as already mentioned, more than 100 projects.
Thank you, Secretary Pascual. Let's move on to tourism. And for the DOT, here's what the President said. Air transport and tourism have been made more convenient because of the shift to paperless immigration and customs forms, thanks to the e-travel system. Soon, the piloted e-gates will be standard fixtures at airports to further facilitate ease of mobility during departures and arrivals. The implementation of the Philippine e-visa will be the next in our digital transformation agenda. Secretary Frasco, what does this mean for the Department of Tourism?
Thank you, Daphne. Good morning, everyone. Mayong buntag sa tanan. Well, we're very grateful that the President's prioritization of tourism continues, as very well articulated in his State of the Nation address. This, of course, necessitates the elevation of the Philippine tourism experience, which requires the introduction of digitalization, especially in the very first touch point for our tourists, and that is our airport arrivals. With the President's directive for the implementation of the e-visa system, we anticipate more international arrivals into the Philippines, especially that this will bring the Philippines shoulder to shoulder with our ASEAN neighbors that have already implemented e-visa systems. With the digitalization of the requirements for entry into the Philippines, we have also seen that this has increased convenience for our travelers coming into the country. And therefore, we welcome the President's programs that have been the result of collaboration between our government agencies, including the Bureau of Immigration, as well as the DFA and, of course, the DOT. We anticipate that with these programs that foster a more convenient and seamless entry into the Philippines, we will further improve the Philippine tourism experience.
Thank you. And here's another quote from the President. But the tourism challenge has already evolved and now requires a multifaceted strategy. The focus is now on experiential tourism. Secretary Frasco, what does that mean? Please expound on the term experiential tourism.
We're grateful that no less than our President has endorsed the programs that have been instituted by the Department of Tourism under the National Tourism Development Plan that he approved, where we anchor the Philippine tourism experience not only on our award-winning destinations, our mega biodiversity, but also on the strength of the Filipino culture, heritage, and identity. To allow our tourists to look at the Philippines from the length and the lens of our culture, our heritage, and our strengths as a people. And that is why, under the DOT's programs, we have applied a multidimensional strategy towards tourism. That includes a promotion of our food tourism, having recently just completed the United Nations Gastronomy Tourism Forum for Asia Pacific, which was attended by delegates from 43 countries, and that was held in Cebu. The promotion of heritage culture and the arts, where the DOT has taken the Philippine Experience Heritage, Culture, and Arts Caravans to 9 regions so far, where we work with our local government units to introduce their destinations upon the strength of the nuances of these destinations. The flavors, the songs, the dances, the traditions that have been long-standing, as well as the practices of our local indigenous communities, of which we take great pride. We are also very much into the collaboration with the private sector as far as ensuring that when our tourists come to the Philippines, they're able to enjoy the many other offerings of the country. And this includes our dive tourism, our golf tourism, and especially as well halal tourism. The Philippines was recognized now for the second year in a row as the emerging Muslim-friendly destination among the non-OIC countries. And this, we anticipate, will further expand the Philippine tourism portfolio, especially to our Muslim brothers and sisters that may want to come to the country. And therefore, with the President's directive of allowing Philippine tourism to be anchored on the Philippine identity, we anticipate that our tourists' experience in the country will encourage them to stay longer, to spend more, and to come back again and again as they enjoy all the programs and products of Philippine tourism enhanced by the love and warmth of the Filipino people.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia Frasco. And now let's move on to food security, which is of course one of the priorities of this administration. In his SONA, nabanggit ng Pangulo, kaya patuloy nating sinusuportahan ang sektor ng agrikultura upang mapabilis, mapadali at mapalakas ang produksyon mula pagpunla, pag-ani at paghuli hanggang sa pagbiyahe at pagbenta, at upang maiwasan din ang pagsira ng mga produkto. Nitong nakalipas na taon, higit 100 milyong kilo ng mga sari-saring binhi, suwi at pataba ang ipinamahagi sa mga magsasaka. Namigay rin ang pamahalaan ng higit 300,000 inahin upang ito ay maparami. Para sa mga isda, naman, mahigit 500 milyong fingerlings at 3,000 mga bangka ang ipamahagi. Nakatulong din naman ang ginawa at inayos na mga fish ports upang masuportahan ang kanilang industriya. That is a lot and really worth enumerating, and I'm so glad that the President did that. Secretary Laurel, gaano kahalaga ang mensaheng ito ng ating Pangulo sa sektor ng agrikultura?
Well, ang mensahe ni Presidente ay napakalinaw, no? Kung nakita niyo yung detalya, it just shows how the President is on top of the situation. Although may problema nga tayo, pero nakita niyo naman na lahat ng aspect ng ating from planting hanggang harvest, ang pagbebenta para sa pangingisda, yung kailangan na ports and all, alam niya, nakatutok ho tayo dyan at napaka-importante talaga na yung suporta ni Presidente ay nandyan sa ating agricultural sector.
Thank you. Kasama rin sa mga ibinahagi ng Pangulo, katuwang ang mga lokal na pamahalaan, dinagdagan pa natin ang mga kadiwa sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Higit sa lahat, layunin nating gawing permanente rin at mas madalas pa ang pagdaraos ng mga kadiwa. This certainly is good news. Secretary, please give us more details about this.
Yung Kadiwa program, which was launched during the President Marcos Sr.'s time, is actually a very good program na napabayaan for many years. So ngayon, ang gagawin natin is ile-level up natin from like a mere pop-up stores at meron dito, minsan wala, meron gagawin natin permanent brick and mortar stores to all over the Philippines. No, hopefully we will try to achieve 1,500 sites in the next 3 years, no? Para masilbihan ng halos bawat munisipyo at city sa buong Pilipinas. Then ang maganda rito is parang ang Kadiwa, ang plano natin is maging cooperative run ito eventually. So yung mga farmers mismo, at fishermen, ay makadiretso sa consumers. Yan ang para lumaki ang kita ng mga farmers and fishermen at bumaba naman ang bili ng presyo ng mga consumers. Yan ang basic idea dyan. And of course, it is also done in order to keep our retailers and wholesalers honest, no? Mabawasan ng profiteering if possible. So para bumaba din ang inflation. Thank you.
Thank you. The President also stated, still in agriculture, handa na rin ang pamahalaan na ilabas ang mga bakuna laban sa African swine fever na nagpapalakas sa mga alagang hayop at nagbibigay ng garantiya sa mga magsasaka laban sa pagkalugi. Again, Secretary Chu Laurel, paano ito matutulungan ang ating mga kababayan?
Well, ASF o African swine fever is really a big problem sa ating pork industry. And yung solusyon nga dito na nakikita, of course, one is biosecurity. But biosecurity alone is not enough, in my opinion, in our opinion. So yung ASF vaccine which was recently approved, na ASF vaccine which was recently approved, ay baka ibibid out na ng DA ito this August at hopefully by September ma-implement na. Titirahin natin at babakunahan natin yung mga red areas, no, red zones and yellow zones, hopefully to eradicate this for the growers. With that, we are hopeful na masolve na unti-unti yung issue sa ASF at hopefully by the end of the year, halos wala na sana to.
Thank you, Secretary Chu Laurel. Still on agriculture, but this time patubig. Okay, let's move on to the right side of the stage. Ang sinabi ni Pangulo, patutunayan ng proyekto sa Halaur River ang pinalalawig na potensyal ng irigasyon. Hindi na lamang patubig sa sakahan ang kaya nitong gawin. Ito na rin ay magagamit sa pagkontrol ng baha, paglikha ng kuryente, at pati na rin sa turismo. Moving forward, irrigation dams will supplement all our bulk water projects to ensure water security for our people, especially in the underserved areas. Administrator Guillen, you've had a great year also pushing for these high dams. Maybe this time, let's talk about the importance of Halaur and the high dams that you're building.
Well, thank you, ma'am. When it comes to food security, ang number one requirement po kasi niyan is yung irrigation facility. So, nakita naman po natin, pag nagtayo tayo ng mga high dams, multipurpose po yan eh. So, hindi ka lang merong irrigation, meron kang hydropower, meron kang ngayon multipurpose na yung water rights ng NEDA, bulk water, aquaculture, tourism. So, maganda po, malaki ang bawi natin dyan. At saka yan yung ating pang long-term solution. Ano po. So, now, kung titignan ko kasi natin, balikan natin yung pangalawang question nyo, yung 3 milyong kakulangan natin sa ating pagkain. Ano po. Sa amin po kasi sa NEDA yan, meron kaming 3 approach dyan. 2 non-infra, tsaka 1 infra. Ang una dyan, dapat i-increase natin yung ating cropping intensity. Nasa 1.6 lang tayo eh. So ang gagawin lang namin sa NEDA yan, lalagay namin 2 cropping sa dry season, which is October hanggang February. February, magtatanim kami ulit, July, and then meron tayong dry season. Para at least, meron tayong almost 3 para ma-increase natin yung ating production. Pangalawa, dapat ma-increase natin yung yield. Ano po? Pag nilagay namin yung 2 cropping ngayon sa dry season, tataas ang yield. Kasi alam naman natin lahat na kapag dry season, mataas ang yield, lalo na pagka hybrid seeds ang ating itatanim. Ano? Kaya nga mamaya, after nito, meron kaming convergence meeting with Secretary Kiko at sisiguraduhin namin na yung mga inputs na ipaparating ng DA at ng ating Pangulo sa ating mga magsasaka ay dapat na sa mga farmers natin prior na mag-release kami ng patubig. That would ensure yung pagtaas ng ating yield. Ano po? Yung 3 milyon kasi na yan, tansya ko, mga 500,000 to 700,000 hectares ang kailangan nating i-construct. Hindi naman natin mabibigla po yun, ano? But pagka in-increase mo yung yield, nasa 4.2 yata tayo eh. Kung ma-increase mo lang ng 6 tons per hectare, food secure na po tayo eh. Rice, hindi na tayo mag-import ng rice. So yun yung isang target namin with the DA. Dapat ilagay mo sa, science-based. Pagdating ng inputs, dapat science-based siya. Hindi siya dapat farmer's choice. Yun ho ang idea po ng NEDA dyan. Ano? And pagdating naman po sa infrastructure, katabi ko naman ang ating DBM Secretary ngayon. Mamaya, bago matapos itong forum, ay naibulong ko na po lahat yung aming pangangailangan. At nagpapasalamat din po ako sa Congress kasi nakikita naman po namin, ramdam namin yung yung tulong nila sa atin sa pamumuno po ni Speaker Romualdez, talagang natulong po sila sa NEDA. So, yun po, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Gillian. Kitang-kita naman natin na the importance of agriculture. We've seen the support by giving inputs, but also the continued investment in infrastructure na kailangan talaga natin, especially in this time na parati tayong we are exposed to some climate-related emergencies sometimes. So this is also in preparation for all of that to give us food security. Now, usaping agraryo naman, ibinahagi ni Pangulong Marcos. Pinamamahagi na rin ang mga certificates of condonation kaugnay ng pagpapawalang bisa sa mahigit 57 bilyong pisong utang ng mga 600,000 benepisyaryo. Secretary Estrella, I know you have been waiting for this moment. Please tell us about this.
Maraming salamat, Daphne. Alam mo, akala ko hindi mo na ako tatawagin. Sapagkat doon sa kanina naghihintay kami, ako'y doon sa sinabi ng ating Pangulo, yung tungkol sa pamimigay ng Certificate of Condonation, may kwento ko lang, nung kami ay nagkakampanya pa, at lalo na sa Pangasinan, ang ating mahal na Pangulo, he's a very observant person. I guess he learned this from his father. And alam po ninyo, marami siyang tinatanong tungkol sa mga magsasaka, tungkol sa mga agrarian reform. And yun pala, nagfo-formulate na sa kanyang isipan. Kanya't nung siya ay naupo, he hit the ground running. Kaya pinatawag ako at sabi niya sa akin, Conrad, pwede ba? Ikaw na lang ang sekretary ng DAR. Ang sabi ko, opo, sige, tatanggapin ko po ang maging sekretary ng Department of Away and Reklamo. Kaya nag-usap kami at sinabi niya sa akin, alam mo ba, Sec Conrad, sabi niya, sa palagay ko, itong sitwasyon ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries na nabigyan natin ng lupa at meron silang binabayaran na monthly amortization dito sa lupa na ito sa Land Bank of the Philippines. Ang sabi niya, ito ang sitwasyon ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries. Unang-una, merong climate change. Naapektuhan ng gusto ang ating agrikultura. Alam, iyan ng ating Secretary ng Department of Agriculture. Pangalawa, nagkaroon ng pandemya. Naapektuhan na datos. Kaya't minabuti ng ating mahal na Pangulo. Ang sabi niya, mabuti pa, wag na natin pagbayarin ang mga magsasaka. Dahil hindi na rin lang naman sila makakabayad dahil sa sitwasyon na to. Ang sabi naman namin noon, opo sir, at yung inyong ama, namigay ng lupa, ngunit may kasamang utang, kayo po, ibibigay nyo ang lupa na walang kasamang utang. Sa palagay ko, yan ang genuine agrarian reform. So, what he did, in the meantime, kasi kailangan niya ng enabling law. Nung wala pang batas, ang ating mahal na Pangulo ay lumagda ng isang executive order. Ito po ay Executive Order number 4, suspending or calling for a moratorium of payment of amortization by the agrarian reform beneficiaries. Pansamantalang hindi mo na sila magbabayad. Habang hinihintay natin ang House of Representatives at ganun din ang Senate na mag-aproba ng panukalang batas na burahin na ang utang ng ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries. At nagpapasalamat kami kay Speaker Romualdez at ganun din sa lahat ng mga congressmen sapagkat itong panukalang batas na ito doon sa Kongreso walang tumutol kahit isa. Lahat sila unanimously approved. Ang ganun din sa Senado, nagpapasalamat din kami sa kanila sapagkat unanimously approved din ang panukalang batas na ito. At agad-agad pinirmahan ng ating mahal na Pangulo. At nung pinirmahan niya, ay ang ibig sabihin nito, ang mga amortization fees ng agrarian reform beneficiaries ay burado na. Ngayon, pagkatapos nito, siyempre kailangan namin i-validate ng Land Bank of the Philippines at ganoon din ng agrarian reform. At it took some time for us to validate at ngayon na validate na namin, meron na kaming certificate of condonation and release of mortgage na i-award. As a matter of fact, nag-award na kami doon sa Pangasinan nung nakaraang linggo ng ating mahal na Pangulo. At ito ang tuluyan na nag-aalis ng tanikala upang tuluyan ng maging malaya ang ating magsasaka. At dahil dyan, yung kikitain nila, imbis na ibabayad nila sa monthly amortization, ito'y magagamit pa nila sa pagsasaka o di kaya pag-aralin ng kanilang mga anak at marami pang bagay. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Estrella. Another help for Filipinos was also mentioned during the President's SONA. To reduce unnecessary business costs, local government units no longer collect fees and charges from motorists transporting goods and merchandise while passing through national roads. On the same principle, LGUs have been strongly urged to refrain from collecting similar fees for the use of local roads. How does the DILG view this? Yusek Odi.
Yeah, good morning, Ms. Daphne, of course. Naimbag nga malem kada kayo amin. Thank you, of course, to the President and, of course, to this administration for making DILG as well as local government units part or an integral part of this food security and economic development agenda. In that respect, Ms. Daphne, EO 41 was issued by the President, espousing that prohibiting imposition and collection of pass-through fees along national roads and strongly urging local government units to do the same. And Secretary Benhar Abalos, of course, under his leadership, is very supportive on food security. And LGU really plays vital roles para sa ganon ay ma-implement itong EO 41 intent. And various policy support had been issued by the department, number one of which is making an inventory kung ang mga lokal na pamahalaan ba talaga ay nag-i-impose at nagko-collect ng mga pass-through fees. And pangalawa, that policy support also emphasized and espoused na kailangang i-revoke ang mga ordinansa na hindi in sync or sumasang-ayon sa EO 41 and of course under our laws, Republic Act 7160. True enough, may 40 na lokal na pamahalaan out of 1,715 LGUs na may ordinansa imposing and collecting pass-through fees. Ito'y pabigat sa ating mga UBRA, Broilers Association, mga livestock associations, mga vegetable traders, and of course, the transport group. Okay, mga truckers association. So, they really had advanced their concerns and issues na itong mga unnecessary fees because of the pass-through ay dinadagdag to ng ating mga truckers association sa mga goods as well as services, particularly the agriculture products. Pabigat nga naman talaga sa ating mga mamamayan, considering nga na sobrang umaaray sa inflation. So, very strong si Secretary Benhar, and thank you, Mr. President, for this, na rallying to ease the burden of the Filipino families. And itong 40 na to, sa awa ng Diyos, as of ngayon, wala na tayong ordinansa imposing pass-through fees sa ating mga lokal na pamahalaan. Kaya maraming salamat man sa mga 40 LGUs na yan. And at the same time, nirevoke nila yung kanilang mga ordinansa. But, importante na may continuous na dialogue. We don't stop monitoring and of course, telling LGUs na revoke that, rescind all your ordinances na inconsistent with national policies. We really need to monitor the impact, the result. And recently, And Truckers Association had advanced again their complaint. Meron pa rin daw. That's why Secretary Benhar Abalos, of course, and the team, the DILG team, really made an effort. We need to strengthen our operations. Police operations, as well as LGU, make feedback as well. Ano bang nangyayari sa ground? Huwag natin pabayaan. That's why our police stations, our DILG officers have this regular consultation with the Truckers Association, encouraging them to rebuild the trust of our Truckers Association, as well as the vegetable, fish, as well as broilers, dealers. Para sa ganoon is, there is a good engagement. A healthy engagement na yung mga ground na kailangan i-monitor ay maipapaabot sa atin as well as sa mga local chief executives. As of now, we need to strengthen more our police visibility, a good feedback, a more or less sincere, complaint advancement, sa ating opisina at bukas man ang ating opisina for that. And again, we will support, of course, food security and economic development, particularly ang pagbiyabiyahe ng ating mga goods and services, Ms. Daphne.
Thank you, Undersecretary Pasaraba. Kitang-kita natin the importance of the role of the DILG in implementing the national government's agenda. And thank you for working with the local governments and cooperating with our national agenda. Now, my seatmate, for Arta, Undersecretary Abot, what is your reaction to this statement by the President? Conscious efforts to improve the ease of doing business and of delivering government services through digitalization, integration, and streamlining of processes have produced their intended multiplier effects. Cost savings from operations have translated to higher revenues and more speedy transactions. Undersecretary Abbott, would you like to share more details about this?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Daphne. The President has mentioned this in his SONA, to streamline and digitalize the processes of national government agencies as well as LGUs so that we will be promoting ease of doing business. Our agency has been in the forefront of streamlining and digitalizing this process. This is in collaboration with national government agencies like DTI, DICT, DILG, and other government agencies. One significant program that I would like to present to you is that we ensure the compliance of the LGUs with regards to the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop, or the EBOS. Actually, out of the 1,634 cities and municipalities in the Philippines, there is already 1,178 cities and municipalities that declare themselves to have automated their business process. This means that their business registration is automated. However, this is not yet fully compliant, meaning that we have to validate it. Our agency has to validate it so that they will be fully compliant with the law. Out of that 1,178 cities and municipalities, there's about 741 of them that has adopted the E-LGU of the DICT. And out of that 741 or 1,741, there's about 46 that are fully compliant with the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop. So what is the effect of this being compliant with the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop? First, it reduces the processing time for businesses to register their entities, their businesses. Second, there's an increase in income. So aside from the reducing the business processing time of their registrations and their renewal, there's also an increase in income. I'd like to share a story about this effect of the Electronic Business One-Stop Shop. Actually, because of this ease of doing business program, an OFW who is based in Doha, Qatar, was able to register his business in a municipality in Camiguin, a 6th-class municipality which is EBOS compliant. You see, if even OFW from Qatar can register their business abroad, here in the Philippines, the ease of doing business it has been promoted. No less than the President mentioned and said this, that every government agencies and LGUs must promote the ease of doing business. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Yusek. Now, before we go on, I would just like to thank all of you in our food security and economic cluster. Thank you so much for all that you've done. You've all had a stellar year. And thank you for sharing very quickly your insights on the President's SONA. Now, this part of the program, we will open the floor to questions from the media. We have a question from Ana Lea Gonzalez of the Philippine News Agency.
Hi, sir. Good morning. For Secretary Recto, sir, just want to get your reaction on the concerns aired by medical groups.
Can you speak louder, please?
Hello, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, just want to get your reaction on the concerns aired by medical groups on the DOF circular ordering the remittance of unused PhilHealth funds. And sir, do we have an estimate kung meron pang idle funds from GOCCs na pwedeng gamitin for other projects? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, una sa lahat, sinusundan lang natin yung utos ng Kongreso. Nakapaloob sa budget sa 2024 na kung saan sinasabi ng Kongreso na dapat ang DOF mag-issue ng circular para magamit nga ito mga pondong ito na posibleng hibernating lang o natutulog lang at hindi nagagamit ng ibang mga GOCC. Pangalawa, tinignan natin kung may merit ba yung utos ng Kongreso. At nakita naman namin na totoo na meron at least 200 billion pesos na natutulog sa dalawang GOCC ng ating pamahalaan. Isa dito yung PDIC at pangalawa, yung PhilHealth na roughly 89.9 billion pesos. No? Pangatlo, tinignan natin kung ito'y gagamitin natin para doon sa mga naka-priority sa program fund. Makakatulong ba ito sa ekonomiya ng ating bansa? Makakapaglikha ba ito ng mas maraming trabaho? Nakita namin sa aming pagsisiyasat sa DOF na makakatulong ito sa lalong paglago ng ating ekonomiya by more or less 0.8%. Ibig sabihin, mas madaling makamit natin yung 6% growth rate o di kaya 6.5% growth rate sa taong ito. At dagdag pa dyan, makakalikha na mahigit 600,000 trabaho. Okay. Pangapat na ginawa ng DOF, nagkonsulta kami. Ito ba ay legal na pwedeng gawin? Tinanong namin ang GCG, OGCC, at saka ang COA. Ang balik sa amin ng tatlong ahensya ng pamahalaan, legal lahat ito. No? So, ito ba'y makakadagdag sa deficit ng ating bansa? Hindi matadagdagan ang deficit ng ating bansa. Ito ba'y makakapagdagdag sa utang ng Pilipinas? Hindi rin makakadagdag sa utang ng Pilipinas. At yun ang dahilan kung bakit naman na-issue na nga yung circular at pinasa na mga board of directors, halimbawa ng PhilHealth at saka ng PDIC. So, sa makatwid, hindi mababawasan ang programa ng pangkalusugan ng PhilHealth. In fact, nabanggit nga ng Pangulo kahapon sa SONA niya, nadadagdagan pa. Mahigit 500 bilyong piso ang natutulog sa PhilHealth. Kahit tanggalin pa natin yung 89.9 billion, meron pa rin 500 bilyong piso good for the next 3 years or more. No? At ito'y in fact, mapapabilis pa ang pagsasaayos ng PhilHealth ng efficiency ng mga programang ginagawa nila sa kanilang tanggapan. No? On your second question, if there are other GOCCs, sa ngayon, ang nakikita lang namin yung dalawa. Posibleng meron pa yung iba, pero hindi ganong kalaki siguro. Kaya sa darating na taon, hindi namin inaasahan ni Secretary Mina na madadagdagan pa ang program sa darating na taon. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Secretary Recto, and thank you, Joyce Rocamora. Our next question is from Chris Mundo from Philippine News Agency.
Hi, good morning. To Yusek Abot. Sir, for Arta, every SONA of President Marcos, he never failed to mention about the easing doing business in the country. So what will be the new initiatives of Arta that would further fast-track the transactions in the government to support that investment-led economic growth? And how far are we in achieving that one-day processing of business permits and licenses? And also, sir, for the past 2 years, how many red tape complaints does Arta receive, and what's the current rate for resolving these complaints? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So maraming questions mo. No? I'll try to answer them all. The first things first, actually yung one-day processing time for business permits is already achievable. Hindi lang lahat ng mga LGUs are doing it, but the fastest, I think, is 30 minutes for a city in NCR who is able to process a business permit within 30 minutes. Our goal, we hope to achieve this together with the collaboration with other government agencies, especially the DILG, is 10 minutes. So that's an ambitious number, but we want to do that. So right now there's 30 minutes, and the others are an hour and probably even a day. But we want that all of the LGUs would be able to have their business process reduced by at least half or more by the end of the year. As to the next question regarding the programs, actually we have more than just the EBOS compliance program. We also have the digitalization projects such as the PBRIS, which is the Philippine Business Regulations Information System. This is actually a database of all the regulations, business regulations that will be taken and compiled in a database so that all government agencies and the transacting public would have access to it. This would mean that regulations can be analyzed, assessed, evaluated. We can remove, amend, invalidate, or create new regulations that will be beneficial to the ease of doing business. We also have this program about government services. This is the Artemis, which is the anti-red tape electronic management information system. This is a database of all the government agencies and their services. So meaning that the services will be accessed by the transacting public and even the government agencies. So with these two major programs, I think the government or even the transacting public would be, safe to say, would have easy access and have an environment for promoting the ease of doing business. And I think there's one more question regarding complaints. We are receiving complaints actually, but if there's any specific thing that you want to ask, our complaints handling system right now is not yet digitalized. We are actually doing in a manual way, but we are in the process of digitalizing our electronic complaints management system. Thank you.
Thank you, Undersecretary Abot. Next question is from Joyce Rocamora, Philippine News Agency for the Department of Tourism.
Good morning, Secretary Frasco. I'd like to ask, ma'am, given a good first half performance, will the DOT revise or recalibrate its arrival target as well as projected tourism receipts for the year? And I'd like to ask also, when do you see the country achieving its pre-pandemic figures, ma'am? Thank you.
2023 was a phenomenal year for Philippine tourism, with tourism contributing no less than 3.36 trillion pesos to our economy in terms of international and domestic visitor receipts. We've also seen, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, the highest ever recorded growth rate in terms of tourism direct gross value added to the gross domestic product. And so the contribution of tourism now to the GDP stands at 8.6%. These numbers have translated to that which matters most in everything that we do in the Department of Tourism and in our President's very clear vision for tourism. That is to provide jobs to our fellow Filipinos, In 2023, over 6.21 million Filipinos were employed in tourism. That accounts for 12.9% of our entire national employment rate. And therefore, what we're seeing is a strong resurgence of tourism post-pandemic. We have to understand, however, that it was complete and utter devastation that was suffered by the Philippine tourism industry as a result of the ravages of the pandemic, not to mention all the climate-related crises that have come upon our shores. And tourism faces the unique challenge of only being able to succeed with collaboration with other government agencies. That's why the thrust has really been towards convergence and heavy government investment as far as infrastructure is concerned. Over 96.6 billion was invested by government in tourism in 2023, and tourism investments also amounted to 500 billion pesos. All of these we see to assist Philippine tourism as we move towards being able to recover our pre-pandemic numbers. However, post-pandemic, the view of the world has changed as far as tourism is concerned, in that we not only see or calculate tourism success as far as the warm bodies that come upon our jurisdiction, but rather, more importantly, as far as visitor receipts. Because it is the tourism spending that allows the economy to roll as fast as it should. And what we're seeing is that the Philippines has already recovered over 100% of its visitor receipts from its 2019 numbers, and also exceeds the 94% global average of recovery as far as visitor receipts is concerned. With this upward trajectory of the performance of Philippine tourism under the Marcos administration, what we anticipate is that in the same way that we were able to exceed our targets as far as visitor receipts are concerned for 2023, that we would be able to achieve the same feat for 2024. However, we anticipate that as far as arrivals are concerned, unless and until we are able to fully ease the convenience of coming into the Philippines, especially as far as e-visas are concerned, it does remain a challenge. And so we received the President's directive to fully implement the e-visa with much optimism in the hopes that it will be implemented by the DFA as soon as possible in cooperation with the Bureau of Immigration, as well as the forthcoming improvement of our airports, which will ensure more seamless arrival into the country.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia Frasco. For Secretary Laurel, we have Mr. Jasper Arcalas of Philippine Star.
Morning, Sec. Sec, how optimistic are you that you will be able to hit your target that agriculture and fisheries production would expand between 1% and 2% this year, and what would be the drivers for such growth?
Well, yung this year's targets actually medyo not too easy, no, because we started with El Nino in January, kakatapos lang ng June, and now we're coming with La Nina. But of course, we have more irrigated land, as mentioned by the President, na yung sa Halaur nga, 32,000 hectares, and another 45,000 hectares na bibigyan ng solar irrigation. That will definitely increase production. But then, I'm hopeful naman na sana walang malaking bagyong tumama at yung La Nina na darating ay, of course, El Nino talaga mas mababa ang production ng konti. Pero sa La Nina, as long as walang malaking bagyo, I think we should be mas mataas ang production.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Jervis Manahan of ABS-CBN, still for Department of Agriculture.
Hi, Sec. Good morning. The U.S. Department of Agriculture said that we are projected to import 4.7 million metric tons of rice this year because of the lower tariffs. Are we expecting more imports this year, or are we expecting our imports to reach record high?
Well, yung unang estimate ng USDA was 4 million. I'm actually surprised na nag-increase nila to 4.7. But I don't think the lowering of tariffs will really increase importation. There's no real bearing, in my opinion. No? ang the only reason mag-i-increase ang importation is because of demand, not because of lowering tariff. If there's kulang ang demand, kahit mababa, kahit zero tariff pa yan, mas konti importation. So it's basically demand driven. So I really don't think aabot tayo ng 4.7.
Thank you. We also have our Secretary Estrella. From PTV4, Sujin Kim.
Good morning po, Sec. For Sec Australia, what have the DAR's land distribution and support services for agrarian reform beneficiaries, or ARBs, what have they specifically changed, or how much has it contributed to food security po?
Can you please repeat
Okay po.
your question?
What have the DAR's land distribution and support services for agrarian reform beneficiaries contributed to food security?
Well, yung ginagawa namin ngayon na pinagsisipagan namin ang paparcelize ng mga collective titles that were issued earlier, no? Kasi nung una, meron tayong tinatawag na Collective Certificate of Land Ownership Award, no? Isang titulo, maraming may-ari. Nagkaroon ng confusion, kaya hindi malaman kung sino yung talagang may-ari o kaya kung saan siya magtatanim. Kaya ginagawa namin ngayon, nagpa-parcelize kami para nang sa ganon, yung ownership well-determined, no? Kaya ang nangyayari dito ngayon, pinagsisipagan namin ang mamigay ng mga titulo na talagang sila na ang may-ari at alam kung saan sila magsasaka. And because of this, napansin namin, hindi na chaotic, walang confusion. Alam na nila kung saan sila magtatanim. Kaya nung nagkaroon ng inisyo nila itong collective CLOA, bumagsak ang production. Ngayon, alam na nila kung saan sila magtatanim. Tumataas ang production. Kaya yan ang nagiging contribution natin sa food security. At binibigyan din natin ng mga support services ang ating mga agrarian reform beneficiaries. Katulad halimbawa ng mga modern and binibigyan natin sila ng mga modern equipment. Binibigyan natin sila ng mga mahahalaga katulad ng halimbawa itong tinatawag na para ma-produce nila. Marami silang ma-produce na planting materials. Ginagawa na lang sa laboratory ang mga kailangan nila na pananim. At binibigyan din natin sila ng bagong teknolohiya. Inilalapit natin sa modernized and scientific farming, kaya mas mataas ang production nila. At dahil dito, tumataas. Marami tayong napoproduce ang mga magsasaka. At palagay ko, yan din ang nakakontribute, no? Kaya mas malaki ang ani natin ngayon sa dinami-dami ng ating mga lupa na titulo na pamigay sa mga magsasaka. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Estrella, and thank you to our friends from the media for your questions. At this point, we will give time to our panelists for their quick final remarks, starting with the Anti-Red Tape Authority Undersecretary, Genesis Abot.
Thank you, Daphne. I'd like to read my closing statement. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat ulit. On behalf of our Director General, Secretary Ernesto B. Ferres, and the young men and women of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, I want to express our sincere gratitude to the Presidential Communications Office and the Presidential Management Staff for hosting the Post-SONA discussion forum, allowing us to expound on President Marcos Jr.'s call for a streamlined bureaucracy and a more business-friendly environment. Our mandate is clear: to transform the way government services are delivered. We aim to achieve this through a whole-of-nation approach, fostering innovation and good regulatory practices. In simpler terms, we are here to cut the red tape and to roll out the red carpet for all. The President's vision for a Bagong Pilipinas hinges on a government that works for its citizens, not against them. As we have heard from the SONA, in just 2 years, the administration has implemented numerous projects and initiatives aimed at addressing different issues in society. Arta is here to ensure that these projects and services will be delivered fast, on time, and on schedule. Arta is here to help the President make this vision a reality. But we cannot do it alone. Arta does not see itself as just an authority. We see ourselves as partners. Partners with all stakeholders, both public and private. To our colleagues in the government, let us commit to continuous collaboration for improvement. Let us identify and dismantle unnecessary regulations and processes. Let us embrace technology to streamline processes. To our partners in the private sector, your voices matter. Share your experiences, both positive and negative. Together we can identify bottlenecks and work towards solutions. This is a collective effort. By working hand in hand under a whole-of-nation approach, we can make the Philippines a more attractive destination for businesses, a place where Filipinos can thrive, and a nation that truly embodies the spirit of a Bagong Pilipinas. The road ahead may not be easy, but with our strong spirit of collaboration, we will turn President Marcos Jr.'s directives into tangible results. Let us all be catalysts for change and be a part of the solution. Let us prove that to the world that in the Philippines, there is ease of doing business. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay ang Bagong Pilipinas. Mabuhay ang Bagong Pilipinas.
Thank you. A round of applause for Arta. Thank you for the ease of doing business. And now, Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs, Secretary Frederick D. Go.
Thank you. I will keep mine short. I would like to thank everyone here today and our friends from media for the opportunity to share the country's economic gains and our roadmap towards an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable economy. We will pursue initiatives that will improve the ease of doing business, reduce friction costs, streamline processes and regulations, and elevate the country's global competitiveness to secure strategic investments that contribute to the local industry development, such as Create More. Our vision is one of a thriving, investment-led economy that creates opportunities for every Filipino today and in the years to come. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Go. And from National Economic and Development Authority, Secretary Arsenio Balisacan.
At the beginning of the Marcos administration, we crafted a blueprint that would help us as we emerge from the pandemic and navigate the challenges of economic recovery. This blueprint, the PDP, or Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, contains the strategies and priorities we must implement to meet our development goals. The question is, 2 years later, 2 years in, are we on track? Broadly, we are, as amply demonstrated in the President's SONA. Perhaps the most important proof of this, the good news reported in SONA, we lifted about 2.5 million Filipinos out of poverty, reducing our poverty incidence to 15.5% in 2023 from 18.1% in 2021, exceeding even the target we identified under the PDP. Even more encouraging, the poorer Filipinos' average per capita income grew faster than the average for the entire population, notwithstanding elevated food prices, indicating that economic growth was inclusive as intended by the PDP. Comparatively, economic growth is robust and our employment indicators are improving and better than ever. This means that we are heading in the right direction. We can accelerate our progress if we are able to keep inflation low and manageable and we have no doubt we will be able to do so. We have learned much over the last 2 years as we recalibrated our policies and programs to adjust to changing economic conditions. President Marcos' marching orders for his 3rd year are clear and reflect our nation's development priorities. Though difficult, we must work hard and address the constraints to food security and economic development more broadly. We promise no shortcuts. However, the Filipino people can be assured that the whole of government is addressing our nation's most pressing concerns. Ultimately, what matters to us is not whether we are merely hitting our economic targets. For us in NEDA, the most relevant benchmark is whether our people can afford their needs and wants and are able to live strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure lives. Salamat.
Thank you, Secretary Balisacan. Department of Agrarian Reform Secretary Conrado M. Estrella III.
Thank you so much. Sa atin, mga kasamahan, atin mga agrarian reform beneficiaries na nakikinig ngayon, magpasalamat po tayo sa atin mahal na Panginoon sapagkat ang lupa na naibibigay sa inyo ay libre na po. Wala na pong kasamang utang ito. At ito pong libreng lupa at isang tambak pong support services na ibibigay sa inyo ay babangon tayo muli. Sana po wag natin ibenta ang ating mga lupa. May pag-asa pa po tayo, uunlad pa ang mga magsasaka. And by the way, ang maganda po dito sa Republic Act na nilagdaan ng ating Pangulo, ang Republic Act 11953, ang New Agrarian Emancipation Act, ay meron hong nakatago rito na isang diamante. Ito po ay ang exemption ng mga heirs ng mga agrarian reform beneficiaries sa real estate tax. Kung halimbawa ho, dumating ang panahon na yumaon na ang inyong mga magulang, yun hong paglipat sa inyong sa mga heirs sa tagapagmana ay hindi na po mahihirapan. Kaya po mga atin magsasaka, babangon tayong uli. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Estrella. Department of Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel Jr.
Well, ang DA ay patuloy na makiisa sa adhikain ng Pangulo at walang magugutom sa bagong Pilipinas. Ito ay patuloy na isasagawa nating kagawaran sa pamamagitan ng pagsusulong ng mga nararapat na interventions at policies tungkol sa masaganang agrikultura at maunlad na ekonomiya. Ang magandang performance and accomplishments sa sektor na naging possible sa pamamagitan ng pagsama-samang suporta ng buong pamahalaan or whole-of-government approach para sa mga magsasaka, mangingisda. Ipapasalamat ang kagawaran sa ating Pangulo sa karagdagang 30% taunang appropriation para sa Department of Agriculture mula ng 2022 hanggang ngayon 2024. Makakaasa po kayo sa pamamagitan ng pondong nilaan sa ating kagawaran ay may pagpatuloy natin ang mga programa at proyekto para sa pagpaunlad ng ating sektor. Kagaya na lamang ng pagpapalakas at pagpapataas ng lokal na produksyon, pag-construct at pag-aayos ng mga farm-to-market roads, pagtatayo ng mga karagdagang irigasyon, pag-develop ng ating mga fish ports at iba pang mga proyekto na naglalayong matunugan ang pangangailangan ng ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda upang mapabuti ang ating agricultural production. Gaya ng sinabi ng ating mahal na Pangulo sa kanyang State of the Nation address kahapon, sa kabila ng mga pagsubok at hinaharap ng ating mga sektor tulad ng problema ng supply, puwersa ng kalikasan, giyera at iba pang mga nasaksihan para rin natin maging development ang ating sektor, gaya ng pagtaas ng produksyon ng palay sa pagkalipas na taon. Ito ay dahil sa mga naiparating na iba't ibang tulong o assistance sa ating mga pangsasaka at mga isda sa aspektong technical at fiscal. Per quote of our President yesterday, whatever current data proudly bannering our country as among the best performing in Asia, means nothing to a Filipino who is confronted by the price of rice at 45 to 65 pesos per kilo. It is very important indeed to note that despite the flattering data, isa pa din ang Pilipinas sa mga labis na apektuhan sa mga challenges na kaugnay sa world market. Nais din namin parating sa ating mga kababayan na ang DA ay patuloy makipag-ugnayan sa iba't ibang ahensya ng pamahalaan upang magsugpo ang kartel na patuloy sa pagpupuslit ng mga smuggled agri-fisheries products na nakaka-impluwensya sa mga presyo ng ating mga local basic commodities. Sa sektor ng agrikultura, ika nga ng ating Pangulo, we mean serious business. Patuloy po magsusumikap ang kagawaran ng agrikultura na magplano, magdisenyo at magpatupad ng transformative interventions para sa gawing moderno at profitable ang ating mga sektor tungo sa adhikain ng masaganang bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Tu Laurel. And now the Department of Finance Secretary, Ralph Recto.
Thank you, Daphne. In spite of all the global economic challenges, considering that we just came out of a pandemic, that there are two hot wars, there is a trade war, there is a cold war, in spite of all of this, the last 2 years of the Marcos administration grew by roughly an average of 6.1%. To be able to attain our goals by 2028 in the Philippine Development Plan of reducing poverty to 9%, we have to grow an average of anywhere from 6 to 7% for the remainder of the term of the President. We are on track. Today you have roughly 49 million people working, the highest ever in our history. Pinakamababa ang unemployment rate, pinakamababa ang underemployment rate, mas marami nagtatrabaho, the middle class is growing, yung share of wage and salary workers is roughly at 64%, at katulad na nabanggit ni Secretary RC kanina, 2.5 million na ang nabawasan sa kahirapan simula nung si Pangulo ay naging, si Bongbong Marcos ay naging Pangulo. Ang target by 2028 is to reduce poverty incidence to a single digit to 9%. Ibig sabihin nun, 10 milyon pa ang mababawasan natin sa kahirapan who will elevate their life to higher than the poverty incidence. No? So yan naman talaga ang dahilan kung bakit tayong lahat nandito, to reduce poverty incidence para magkaroon ng magandang buhay ang ating mga kababayan, para nga tayo magkaroon ng bagong Pilipinas. So maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Recto. Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Alfredo Pascual.
Thank you. The DTI is committed to continue to create a competitive business environment to attract foreign investment and encourage our local businesses to invest more in our country. We're also committed to generate high quality and better paying jobs for our people as we expand our industries and economy. We want our economy to be driven by science, technology, and innovation. That's why our support to startups, because they will be the source of innovation for our country. We will play our important role in ensuring consumer protection while addressing food logistics and the supply chain. Aligned with the market trust of Bagong Pilipinas, the DTI vision is encapsulated in our new slogan, Angat Negosyo, Asenso Trabaho, Alagang Consumer para sa Bagong Pilipinas. We are here to enhance the role of MSMEs by providing them comprehensive support from mentoring to technology to access to market using the modern approaches like e-commerce platforms. We are also here to ensure that investors, when they come in, are taken care of fully through our green lanes, for one. And more importantly, we will continue our work to enhance consumer protection, by making sure that regulated products are well prevented to being accessed by those who are not supposed to have them, like minors, should not have easy access to vape products. That's why recently I issued an order suspending the online sale of vape products, and I hope that will protect the health of our young people, which is the hope of our motherland. So we're here to work with our colleagues from the other departments of the government in order to achieve the goals and objectives of Bagong Pilipinas para sa pag-unlad ng bagong Pilipino. Salamat po.
Thank you, Secretary Pascual. And now, Department of Tourism Secretary Maria Cristina Garcia Frasco.
Thank you, Daphne, and thank you to the Presidential Communications Office for organizing this most enlightening forum, especially for the public. We are grateful that our President has, from the very beginning of his administration, seen the vast potential of tourism to uplift the Philippine economy. Tourism is now one of the strongest pillars of our economy and is a source of livelihood for millions of Filipinos. Everywhere you go, across the vast expanse of our archipelagic nation, you will never run out of reasons to love the Philippines. But it requires government intervention as well as private sector collaboration to truly ensure that Philippine tourism reaches the maximum of its potential and is able to provide as many jobs and opportunities as possible to our fellow Filipinos. Therefore, we are encouraged by the President's prioritization of tourism, especially in terms of infrastructure investment, and we welcome that he has prioritized the passage of the Create More Bill, which will surely inure for the Philippines more tourism investment. We're also grateful to the private sector for their invaluable partnership in supporting our President's programs that seek to elevate the competitiveness of the Philippine tourism industry. Apart from the investments in infrastructure, most importantly, we continue to invest in our people. The Filipino people are the best assets of Philippine tourism, which is why in 2023, more than 200,000 Filipino tourism workers have been trained in the Filipino brand of service excellence, which shall ensure that our tourists, when they come to the Philippines and go around the country, that they will have an unforgettable and positive experience that will encourage them to come back again and again. Through the programs instituted by the Department of Tourism in full support of our President's vision to anchor Philippine tourism's success on the Philippine identity, we have seen this to have engendered pride of place, love of nation, and tourism continues to be a force for unity for our country precisely because our President has rallied the entire nation to support this sector. Magpasalamat sad ko sa atong mga kaigsuunang Pilipino, labi na sa Kabisayan ug sa Mindanao sa ilang dako kaayo nga suporta sa Administrasyong Marcos tungod kay nakita nato nga gihatagan gayud og importansya sa atong presidente ang atong mga lugar sa Pilipinas, matagaan sila og dako kaayog higayon nga mulambo pa pamaagi sa turismo. Pinapasalamatan natin yung lahat ng ating kababayan sa inyong pagmamahal sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po sa inyong suporta sa ating presidente at para sa turismo ng Pilipinas. Love the Philippines.
Thank you, Secretary Garcia Frasco. Department of Budget and Management Secretary Amena Pangandaman.
Good morning once again. First of all, allow me to express my congratulations again to PBBM for a very powerful, direct, authentic, and moving State of the Nation address yesterday. Inspired by yesterday's SONA and by dynamic leadership of our President, we at the DBM will remain committed to implement key transformational reforms that will bring our country to upper middle income status and bring poverty down to single-digit levels. Our proposed national budget for next year, which is pegged at 6.352 trillion peso, will adhere to the Philippine Development Plan and 8-point socio-economic agenda and will remain highly responsive to the most urgent national concerns of our Filipino people, and that is to address inflation, to provide job to everyone, reduce poverty, and combat graft and corruption. Our national budget for next year is guided by the theme Agenda for Prosperity, fulfilling the needs and aspirations of the Filipino people. Our goal, as always, is to uplift the lives of the Filipino people. Hence, social services will remain on top of our list. As mandated by the Constitution, education will corner the largest percentage of the national budget, followed by health sector to be prioritized as we seek to improve healthcare, especially in the regions. Next is the economic services, as we continue the Build Better More infrastructure program, including digital infrastructure. We are also on a mission to empower our local government units, including BARM, to ensure, pursue lasting peace and economic development in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. We are also seeking to achieve food security by strengthening our agriculture sector. As PBBM mentioned in SONA, we are improving our irrigation systems nationwide. So nagkatotoo po ang bulong niya sa akin. We have allocated 42 billion pesos for our irrigation systems nationwide for next year. We thank the President for signing the law, the new Government Procurement Act or NGPA last Saturday, July 20, 2024. I believe that this is one of the greatest measures this administration to take to combat corruption. The NGPA will ensure not only competitiveness, efficiency, and sustainability, but greater transparency in the government procurement process. At the DBM, we are working hard to create a culture of transparency and good governance. I am proud to share that the last open budget survey showed that the Philippines is #1 in budget transparency in Asia, as we scored a rate of 76, surpassing the government target under the PDP plan of only 71. We are also now the leader in the Open Government Partnership as the Philippines joins the Open Government Partnership International Steering Committee and is one of the first nations to institutionalize open government through Executive Order Number 31, signed by no less than our President. Under the leadership of President Bongbong Marcos, we remain steadfast in cementing our position as a global leader in budget transparency, oversight, and public participation in the process. We remain on track with our agenda for prosperity. Let us sustain this momentum. And if I may echo the President's SONA yesterday, for our dear Cabinet Secretaries, we expect all agencies to ensure that every centavo allocated will be judiciously spent for our urgent priorities and socially impactful programs. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Pangandaman. Now we hear from National Irrigation Administrator Eduardo Guillen.
Maraming salamat po at nagpapasalamat rin ako kay DBM Secretary Mina. Sabi niya sa akin kanina, ako daw ay MAP Administrator, most annoyingly persistent. Makulit, sabi niya, pero salamat ma'am. Ano po? Well, ang masahan po ng ating mga mamayan sa NIA itong susunod mga taon ay simplify ko lamang po. Ang problema natin kasi sa agrikultura is yung low productivity na tinatawag. Nabanggit ko naman sa inyo kung ano yung mga diskarte natin gagawin. Ano po? Increase natin yung ating cropping intensity, increase natin yung ating yield, and of course yung ating infrastructure. Pero meron lamang po akong banggitin dito na hindi nabanggit ng ating Pangulo sa kanyang SONA na alam ko bilang engineer, napaka-importante. Ito po yung kanyang paradigm shift from flood control to water management. So, makakatulong natin ng ibang agency, yung convergence project natin with DPWH. Napakalaki ho ang flood control na budget ng DPWH. Pero nilagyan po yan dyan sa aming convergence ng irrigation. May pakinabang na po tayo sa irrigation. Yung dating pakinabang natin sa flood control na sa social and environmental lamang, nagkaroon po siya kaya ng economic benefit. So para sa akin po, ito yung triple bottom line concept. Dito natin makikita na yung Build Better More ng ating Pangulo ay hindi lamang isang slogan, kundi talagang totoong makakatulong sa atin lahat at magdadala sa atin. Ito yung crossroads ng Philippine agriculture. Kasi pag dinagdagan mo yung irrigation facilities, tataas ang ating productivity, tataas ang ating yield. Ano? Dito mo makikita din ang mindset ng ating Pangulo. Doon, sa aming mga Ilocano, ito yung kakuriputan namin na titignan natin na bawat sentabo na nandun ay may spend natin ng mas magandang pamamaraan. Ano po? So, makakatulong po ito ng malaki. Pag na-expand mo kasi yung ating irrigation infrastructure, bababa pati yung poverty alleviation natin. Alam naman natin lahat sa report ng PhilSA, nasa 60% ang mahirap ay nandun sa agriculture sector. So, mapababa po natin ito. Ano po? And, of course, ang pangako naman natin sa ating mga Irrigators Association sa buong bansa, ang tawag namin po sa kanila ay BBM, mga bagong bayaning magsasaka. Na ang NEDA ay katuwang po nila lagi sa pagpapaunlad. Of course, ang Department of Agriculture, na katuwang nila kami na mapaunlad ang kabuhayan nila. So, ito po ang ating asahan po sa NEDA. Kami po ay magtutulungan ng mga convergence project natin, lalo na with the Department of Agriculture. Magtutulungan po kami para ang ating mga magsasaka ay magawa natin, ang utos kasi sa atin ng ating Pangulo ay dapat yung mga farmers hindi lang naman producers of goods. Dapat gawin din natin silang consumers of goods and services. Ito ang alam natin na talagang makakatulong sa ating lahat tungo sa ating binibithing bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Administrator Gillian. And now we hear from Department of Interior Local Government Undersecretary Odi Pasaraba.
Yeah, thank you so much once again. As the department is called to support national government agencies, as well, of course, to the development goal for food security and economic development, we partake on the following projects. Farm to Market Road Network with the Department of Agriculture. Of course, water security with DNR as well as NEDA and the PM of the Water Project. Infrastructure governance for our local government units, as well as Kadiwa ng Pangulo, and implementation of the ease of doing business are just some of our support services and programs that really support to ensure the realization of the food security and economic development. And under the leadership of Secretary Benhar Abalos, we always use our powerful allies, the local government units, as an integral element for ensuring food security and economic development. The same local government units that will really spell difference in shaping the lives of the Filipinos. Because we know for a fact that sila po ang unang nakakaramdam, sila ang unang pinupuntahan at direct engagement with the Filipino families. It is in this respect that we are committed to prepare them more, prepare them better, both performance, more focus, more competitive, more enabling local institutions that we really take care of the Filipinos, particularly their needs for food availability, food accessibility, market access, and stability of life. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Undersecretary Pasaraba. And now, the Philippine Space Agency Director General Joel Joseph Marciano Jr.
So space, the final frontier and also the final word today. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa ating Pangulo at sa ating mga kababayan sa suporta sa ating space program at sa Philippine Space Agency. PhilSA, isang 4-year-old agency po na nagsusumikap na mag-contribute sa nation building. Nireinforce po ng ating Pangulo ang mensahe na ang space o kalawakan ay hindi po malayo sa buhay ng bawat Pilipino. Kinilala po niya na ang kalawakan ay isang importanteng domain for national security and development, for hazard management and studying climate resilience or improving climate resilience, for food security, maritime domain awareness, at pati na rin po pagbantay sa ating West Philippine Sea. Nung binanggit po ng ating presidente, yung 16 engineers natin na binubuo po kasalukuyan ng ating pinakamalaking Earth observation satellite na MULA, Multispectral Unit for Land Assessment, the President was imparting a message of hope and inspiration. He recognized the efforts of engineers and scientists in our midst, mga kapwa Pilipino po natin, na talagang dedicated po at nagpupursige para makakontribute sa nation building. Bigyan po natin sila ng ating tuluyang suporta, palakasin pa po natin ang suporta natin sa kanila. Naalala ko po, binanggit ni Presidente ang ating mga atleta na nasa Paris Olympics. Ito pong mga scientists and engineers natin, the space engineers, space scientists, they are like our athletes competing in the international arena to improve the competitiveness and innovation of our country. Yung pong satellite na to, one final point, hindi po tayo bumibili ng satellite. Tayo po ay bumubuo ng satellite. Kasama ng satellite na to, yung lisensya para ma-manufacture ang satellite na to sa ating bansa. So this opens the door for creating a strong industrial base in this new and exciting frontier of space technology, hopefully creating better jobs for more skilled workers and improving the economic complexity of our country. And finally, inimbitahan po namin kayo sa ating Philippine Space Week, August 8 to 14 next month. Ang ating theme po ay Yamang, Kalawakan, Likas sa ating bagong Pilipinas. So abangan nyo po ang ating website, ng Philippine Space Agency, social media for all the events. Maraming salamat po ulit.
Thank you, Director General Mariano, and thank you to all our cabinet secretaries. Let's give them a round of applause for all the great news. Before we end, I'd like to reflect also and bring it back to what you said last year, this time, Secretary Balisacan. You said in our path to economic development, the stars are aligned for the Philippines. And I think we have seen that in your reports and what we've seen and what your agencies have done in the past year. As Secretary Recta said, we are on track. And I'd like to add, we are in good hands. So thank you so much to our cabinet secretaries and heads of agencies here. Thank you for your support and your participation, and of course the reforms that you're putting in place so that the President's vision of Bagong Pilipinas will come true. Thank you. And we will be back later at 12 noon with the Environmental Protection and Disaster Risk Reduction Cluster. I'm Daphne Osenia Paez, and this has been the 2024 Post-SONA Discussions.